Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, entitled Maharaj Name Meets 9 Yogendras. Text 43. Iti Achyuta Anghrim Bhajata Anuvritya Bhakti Virakti Bhagavat Prabodha Bhavanti Vai Bhagavatasya Rajan Tata Param Shantim Upaiti Sakshat Iti Achyutagrim Bhajato Nuvritya Iti Achyutangrim Bhajato Nuvritya Bhaktir Viraktir Bhagavat Prabodha Bhaktir Viraktir Bhagavat Prabodha Bhavanti Vai Bhagavatasya Rajams Bhavanti Vai Bhagavatasya Rajams Tata Param Shantim Upaiti Sakshad Tata Param Shantim Upaiti Sakshad Iti Achyutagrim Bhajato Nuvrityam Bhaktir Vyaktair Bhagavat Prabodham Bhavanti Vai Bhagavat Tasya Rajams Tata Param Shantim Upaiti Sakshad Iti Achyutangrim Bhajato Nruvityam Bhaktir Bhaktir Bhagavat Prabodham Bhavanti Vai Bhagavatansya Rajams Tata Param Shantim Upaiti Sakshat Iti Achyutangrim Bhajato Nuvrityam Bhakti Virakti Bhagavat Prabodha Sarajam Bhakti Shantim Paiti Saksha Iti Achyutangrim Bhajato Nuvrityam Bhaktir Viraktir Bhagavat Prabodham Bhavanti Vai Bhagavatamsya Rajams Tata Param Shantim Upaiti Sakshat Iti Achyutangrim Bhajato Nuvritya Bhaktir Viraktir Bhagavat Prabodha Tasya Rajams taparam shantimupaiti sakshat. Matajis? Okay. Iti, thus, Achyuta of the infallible Supreme Lord, Anghrim, the feet, Bhajata, for one who is worshipping, Anuvritya, by constant practice, Bhakti, devotion, Virakti, detachment, Bhagavat Prabodha, knowledge of the personality of Godhead, Bhavanti, they manifest, Vai, indeed, Bhagavatasya, for the devotee, Rajan, O King Nimi, Tata, then, Param Shantim, supreme peace, Upaiti, he attains, Sakshat, directly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My dear King, the devotee who worships the lotus feet of the infallible personality of Godhead with constant endeavor, thus achieves unflinching devotion, detachment, and an experienced knowledge of the personality of Godhead. In this way, the successful devotee of the Lord achieve supreme spiritual peace. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Iti achyutangrim bhajato nuvritya bhaktir viraktir bhagavat prabodha bhavanti vai bhagavatam rajams tata param shantimupaiti sakshat. My dear King, the devotee who worships the lotus feet of the infallible personality of Godhead with constant endeavor, thus achieves unflinching devotion, detachment, and experienced knowledge of the personality of Godhead. In this way, successful devotee of the Lord achieves supreme spiritual peace. Very often we wonder, how are we advancing in bhakti? How are we advancing on the path of devotional service? So, throughout the Shastra, throughout Srimad Bhagavatam particularly, we are given instructions, we are giving descriptions. What is the state of somebody who is therefore advancing? What are the symptoms? How do we know? What is our position? So here is also one of those examples or instructions which point out to some kind of measurement, some kind of a ruler, some position that we can ascertain where we stand in our devotional service. What is that level that we have achieved by practicing devotional service? So it becomes very, very clear, because devotional process, it's not something ambiguous. It is very clear, just like we know, especially by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, has given description what it means to be on different levels from Shraddha to Prema. And it's very clear. There is nothing that it's ambiguous. It's very clear. So, what is our attachment towards Krishna and what is our detachment from material energy. So according to that, we exhibit certain symptoms and perform certain type of activities, and then we can very clearly see what is our position. Mostly, of course, we are trapped on the level of anartha nivritti, struggling to purify all the anarthas. But still, if we remain steady, if we continue practice devotional service, then even that level can become surpassed. And then one reaches that firm faith. So everything is about the faith. It starts with faith, continues with faith, and there is just such a firm faith that, as we know, through Sharanagati, the 6 different ways of surrender, that we fully surrender unto Krishna. We have such a faith that whatever Krishna instructs, whatever Krishna wants from us, that we are ready to perform. So here also in this verse, it is pointed that different symptoms, what are these different symptoms that one can achieve by performing devotional service? Or here more specifically, worshipping the lotus feet of the infallible personality of Godhead. What is it that happens? How do we develop attachment towards Krishna? Just like we have been hearing earlier, that wonderful example, the analogy that has been given, how one develops detachment, from material world, how one develops attachment towards Supreme Personality of Godhead, how one comes to know about Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is also repeated here. So the analogy was just like also when one eats, develops satisfaction, nourishment, and cessation from hunger. There is that urge is gone. I mean, that demand of the urge. Then that is not there. So in the similar way, so it's a very, very wonderful analogy that directly points out what is the experience. So we always have an opportunity to have an experience, because by the experience then we can judge, we can understand what is going on, what is the position, where we are, what still we are supposed to head towards. So it becomes very, very clear. We just have to, of course, the most difficult thing is very often we are not so honest about it. We are expecting many other manifestations that might not be there. So that's something that it's influence of the false ego. We expect to be on a certain much greater level than actually we are. And because of that creates a lot of disturbance. That creates a lot of disturbance. And then a lot of different kinds of activities that we perform affects others who are also performing devotional service. And then it becomes disturbance. And then we also very often not even follow the Shastra. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatrim Vida Pancharatrik Vidim Vida Ahaituki Hare Bhakti Utpataya Iva Kalpate. Utpat, it becomes utpat, disturbance. So that's all again because of the false ego. So for that reason we always have some kind of authority that kindly points out to what really is the position. So sometimes that might not be pleasing. Definitely it's not pleasing to smithen the false ego, sometimes to forge the false ego, to purify the false ego. But it is essential because we understand that our spiritual position, Svarupa Shakti, can be attained by the process of humility. Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnuna manina manadena kittaniya sadahari. Then only one can be like this, like it is said here, worshipping constantly, chanting constantly, by attaining a certain mood, certain disposition, certain attitude. And that attitude is that of humility. But our ego is always constantly obstructing us on that path, because we have wrong conceptions about ourselves. That's why it is false. So that falseness has to disappear. That falseness has to become purified. So when one in the course of time somehow survives, manages to remain steady in one's devotional service, then one will see how that taste for Krishna consciousness increases more and more and more. One becomes more attached to worshipping the lotus feet of Krishna, to taste the holy name of Krishna, and therefore achieves unflinching devotion. So that happens automatically. Just like we also don't know when the digestion takes place, how that satisfaction is manifested, how that nourishment is manifested, how that cessation of hunger it's manifested. It just happens automatically. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada would give the analogy. I say it's like a medicine. We don't have to necessarily know how does the medicine work, but it works. It works. It will produce the result. Just like 2 weeks ago, I had some little sardi, something was going on, whatever, and Emagiri Prabhu kindly gave me some medicine. Then he gave me some other medicine, which was some kind of capsule. There was some antibiotic in the capsule, and I didn't want to take the capsule, so I put it aside. Because capsules are usually not vegetarian also, one has to be very careful. Or I took one first, I took that powder, but then after some time I didn't. And of course there was some side effect, which put me in a lot of trouble. And then he asked me, then why you didn't take this other one? I said, I didn't want to take that other one. I said, you have to take that other one because it reduces the heat. That heat made me, put me in a very uncomfortable situation. So then he gave me some other tablet, which was balancing this first tablet, So like this, we have to understand, we have to know how the process, we have to accept the process fully, not just, partially also. That's the point. So we might not know exactly how it works, but then at least we have to have the faith that we follow the process as it should be followed, no? Because if we just, like something like half-hand logic, we just do things, perform things partially, then the result will be trouble to some extent. There will be some side effect. Of course, by practicing devotional service, there are no side effects. Everything is most auspicious. Everything is most auspicious. The only thing is not to perform it appropriately. That's why when the bhakti is mixed with karma or jnana or some other attachments, or it's affected by the false ego, then that's where the troubles start, when the difficulties start on this path of devotional service. But otherwise it becomes very obvious here. This unflinching, steady attachment towards practice of Krishna consciousness becomes developed. And then we lose the taste. We lose the taste for so many things that we have taste for before we started practicing Krishna consciousness. So at least on the gross level, that's why it said, on the gross level it becomes fully purified when one surpasses then anartha nivritti. And then it said till the level of bhava, then still some little subtleties, some subtle contamination in the mind remains to some extent. So that doesn't mean that one has to act upon that, but maybe sometimes some thoughts might manifest about something that it's negative, something that it's affected by some subtle form of lust, anger, greed, madness, envy, illusion, some subtle little form. And then it says also here, detachment. So we develop attachment towards Krishna, unflinching devotion, and then detachment from this material world, because we understand by devotion, once we have rasovarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate, once we have the higher taste, then of course we lose the taste for anything that is of any lower quality. And we become detached. We are not longer seeking some kind of material entertainment, material some whatever, I don't know, for the mind, whatever we have been so attached or interested to do before, something that's completely material, that again enhanced the position of false ego. It made us identify wrongly with so many things, with our position specifically. With the, therefore then even activities that we perform. So then this detachment from such kind of unwanted activities becomes fulfilled. And then the third point was the experienced knowledge. So that means one gains the experience, one gains the faith, again even more faith. One understands how Krishna becomes active and manifested in one's life. One gains that experience, direct experience. So how is that? Well, that's very often through instructions of Paramatma, very often by performing devotional service. We just see how Krishna acts in our life, performs different activities, different, we may call it the miracles, how did this happen? How did so much, let's say, book distribution happened? How did that, we couldn't even conceive. We might have tried, but then somehow it just so happened. It's Krishna's mercy. It's just incredible how many things can happen if we allow ourselves to become an instrument. Nimitta matra bhava savyasachi, but appropriate instrument, not dull, rusty, or something that Krishna can use to act and manifest such kind of results of the devotional process, so that we can be useful instrument. So then one gains so many different kinds of realizations on the path of spiritual practice and has that direct perception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As like Srila Prabhupada would say, I never did in my life anything that it wasn't guided by Krishna. That means by Paramatma. So whatever, it was inspired by Paramatma. So that's also, as we said, one kind of perception of the Supreme Absolute. And of course we can have a perception, so many things happen on the altar, so many wonderful realization may happen when one worships the deities, which is also directly described here, a devotee who worships the lotus feet of the infallible personality of Godhead. And then constantly endeavors to achieve unflinching devotion. So that means one is inspired more and more and more and more to perform devotional service. There's a constant inspiration, there is a constant longing, there's a constant eagerness. One just wants to hear more, one just wants to serve more. And one is not interested in anything else. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, as stated in Bhagavad-gita 271, Vihaya kaman yasa sarvan pummam charati nishprihaham nirmamo nirahankara sashantim adigacchati. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and who is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. Oh, this is not Srila Prabhupada, this is 11th canto, okay, by disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Anyway, quoting Srila Prabhupada. Now, so that's what everybody is looking for, the peace. This is also one of those peace formula verses in Srimad Bhagavad-gita. Bhaktaram Yagyatapasam, it's one of the more famous ones. But this is another very interesting verse. Points out, Shantim adigacchati, Shantim gacchati. How can one attain the peace? Because without the peace, there's no question of happiness, no? Because mind is always disturbed. Mind is always very flickering. Even if we can attain position or a circumstance where we can apparently be happy and satisfied and gratify our mind and senses, again, still if that mind is not peaceful, it will give so much trouble. It will give so much disturbance. It will give so much anxiety. most often unnecessary. Most often unnecessary. It's just the nature of mind again. If it becomes disturbed, just like sometimes we know on the surface of the water, if there's some waves or something, there's disturbance, then you can't perceive anything below. Yeah? There's so much disturbance. You can't perceive what is happening at the depth of that pond or something. Yeah? That's Patanjali's analogy of the perceiving the soul. Soul cannot be perceived if there is so much disturbance on the surface of the mind mostly, because in the deeper levels of the mind, subconscious level, if there is so much waste, so much garbage, so many unwanted anarthas, that will create certain toxic, which will create ripples and bubbles and waves that will prevent us from perceiving our real self. And then again, it's going to enhance and fortify that false ego, or create even further distorted image of ourselves. But when everything becomes purified and clean, then our perception of ourself as the spirit soul then becomes very, very crystal clear. So therefore one has to achieve the peace. So how to achieve the peace? That's the whole point. Again, why mantra? No? That's what we know. Man means mind, and tra to deliver. No? To deliver the mind. Because mind is again contaminated by so many different attachments towards material energy, exploiting the material energy, resources of the material energy. And therefore there is never peace. How can there be any peace? Because everybody is exploiting the resources of material energy. The whole world is exploiting resources of the material energy. There's a constant struggle who's going to exploit more or who's going to have more, or who is going to exploit whom. It's a constant struggle. So where is the peace? There can never be peace. There can never be a peace. So there's always disturbance, there's always anxiety, there's always trouble. So same thing on our level as well, in our dealings, our little universe, whatever it is. How can there be any peace? Even very often when sometimes we try to arrange some circumstances or work hard to try to gain some gratification, whatever, especially talking about people with materialistic tendencies, even when they try to achieve certain kind of position where they think they can now, yes, I can be happy now, then immediately there comes some trouble, some unexpected disturbance, some unexpected, unpredicted deviation in a relationship or expectation or need or demand. It's just always like this. Peace, it's impossible. There's no question of peace. That's why Srila Prabhupada gave that peace formula, that only if one knows that everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that He is the enjoyer of all the sacrifices, that means everything has to be offered to Him, that He is the well-wisher of all living beings, then one can attain the peace. Then only one can attain the peace. Otherwise there's no question of peace. As long as we think we are the proprietor of this and proprietor of that, then there will always be constant struggle and strife. And therefore this verse also, it's very interesting. It said, a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification. Because one is planning, I will have this kind of sense gratification, I will achieve this, I will make my senses satisfied in this way and that way. And then of course, if that doesn't happen, then what follows? Frustration, disappointment. This has not happened, now what to do? Then what is the next side effect or product of such kind of frustration, disappointment? Then blaming somebody else. Oh, it's someone else's fault. Therefore this had not manifested, this had not happened. So then we blame everybody, we blame Krishna. Oh Krishna, why did you allow this to happen? How could this happen? Has nothing to do, it's just our own attachment to illusion, attachment to ignorance. Because we were thinking, I'm the proprietor and I can have my own sense gratification. That was a greatest misconception. So that's why when one gives up desire for sense gratification, just like Prahlad Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam said, sense gratification, automatically it will come by one's karma. happiness and distress. It will just come. One doesn't have to endeavor for any. To prevent the distress or endeavor for happiness. It just by one's, just like we know, with one's life, one's beauty, knowledge, duration of life, happiness, education, like this. It is already predetermined. So whether one endeavors more or less for any of these, it will just come. It will come. So why being attached? To try to increase it. Just like we know, Duryodhana tried to increase his portion, whatever he has gained, and then he lost everything, no? In Mahabharata. So that, like that, when anytime anyone over endeavors, then one creates even worse circumstance for oneself. So that's for giving up that desire. We know that what it means, desire. Desire has to be dovetailed with the desires of Krishna. Sahayagya praja srishtva purovacha prajapati. Now, if Krishna has given us the process, Krishna has given us the means, even materially, how can one be happy and satisfied in material world, even on that level? But even beyond that, of course, here is the process, here is the bhakti. Here is this rahasya, the greatest mystery, the greatest secret, that it's revealed to those who are devotional, who have devotional service, who want to become a devotees. Yeah. So then those desires for sense gratification, what is the point of sense gratification? Yeah. That's why the more sense gratification, the more sense deprivation. It's just proportional. The more one over endeavors for sense gratification, the more one suffers. The more one suffers. It's interesting. It's just because of different kind of reaction that has been manifested by certain kind of sense gratification. Yeah. One deprives actually oneself. One wastes one's spiritual or even pious credit. No? So one who has given up all sense of proprietorship and who is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain the peace. So here again we have the false ego. False ego. What is false ego? That false identity of any identification with the material body, material mind, contaminated mind. Such a big trouble. That's why the false ego is the most subtlest element that keeps us trapped within this material world. The false ego is the catalyst. You just add any other element, and you take any other element and keep on adding false ego. That's why the whole creation becomes manifested. So as we start reducing the false ego, we start becoming liberated. Less false ego, higher material modes. More false ego, lower material modes, more ignorance. More one becomes trapped, more one becomes ignorant. But less false ego, one becomes more enlightened. One gains more freedom. So if we just completely purify that false ego, which again, it's the whole process of cleaning, of bhakti, which is not easy process, of course. But the more one becomes purified, the more then one will become peaceful. One will become peaceful. Then one doesn't identify with something that one is not. Or he doesn't misuse the resources given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One dovetails desires of Krishna, because whatever Krishna wants, that's what we should understand is the best for us. We just leave it up to him. Okay, I did Krishna, whatever you want. Srila Prabhupada gave one prayer, even when he was not well, he asked the devotees to pray for his health. Krishna, if this may be your desire, something like this. If you may so desire, let this happen, and so forth. So that's our position, that's our attitude. Krishna, if you so desire, So one again, it's detached. One develops detachment. So that's again a symptom. How do we know somebody is advanced in spiritual life? What's your level of detachment? What's your level of detachment? Even in spiritual practice, how much we are attached to something. Of course, we should be attached to certain spiritual result that we should endeavor for. But again, ultimately whatever happens, ma phaleshu kadachana, result doesn't belong to us. Result belongs to Sankirtan department. Anyway, that's what I've been told. It's just, don't worry about your vidya dhan. Anyway, so we should become detached. Remain detached. And then whatever Krishna wants. And then you're happy in your devotional service. That's like this. So in other words, Srila Prabhupada comments, to become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. So that's one cannot be without a desire. No, it would be a logical loop. The desire is the symptom of the living being of the soul. So what do we desire? We desire what Krishna desires. Because again, if you say I want to be desireless, that itself it's a desire. So it doesn't make sense. So desire to please Krishna's desire or perform activities which Krishna instructs us. So there is a similar statement in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Aitaiva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami Shakalya Shanta. That's a famous one. I said, because the devotee of the Lord is desireless, he is peaceful. Fruitive workers desire material enjoyment, jnanis desire liberation, and yogis desire material opulence. Therefore, they're all lusty and cannot be peaceful. And see how the lust manifests again. There's some interest. Yes, I will do. Even somebody performs devotional service, sakam karma, level on the sakam. That means, okay, I'll do devotional service, but I'm expecting certain result. So still there won't be any peacefulness. One has to come to higher level of nishkam karma. Yes, I'll perform devotional service, but I'm not attached to the result. And additional, even higher level for the pleasure of Krishna. That's what's wanted. That's what's wanted. And that one has to strive, or at least should have in mind that that's the goal to be achieved. Let's quickly finish the purport. It's a long one. It said, generally there are three classes of living entities afflicted with selfish desires. These are the Bhukti-kami, Mukti-kami, and Siddhi-kami. Bhukti-kami refers to those ordinary persons who desire money and everything money can buy. So just pretty gross sense gratification, the senses. Such a primitive mentality is based on the desire to enjoy money, sex, and social prestige. When a living being becomes frustrated with this hallucination, he takes to the path of speculative philosophy and analytically tries to track down the source of illusion. Such person is called Mukti-kami because he desires to negate material illusion and merge into an impersonal spiritual state free from anxiety. So it's a natural progression. Artha, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Yes, they're performing Dharma. Dharma has to be performed. They're performing Dharma. But for what? For some result, for some fruit. And then when sense gratification, which cannot satisfy the living being, comes to the point of frustration, then one desires liberation. One realizes that you can't be happy in this material world. Dukhalayama shashvatam. It just doesn't work. Okay, then I'll perform certain transcendental process. Why? I want to become liberated. I want to get out. It's too much. It's just burning. It's just so uncomfortable. I want to get out. But that's still also a desire. Because very interestingly, devotee doesn't even want to become liberated. No? We know that devotee never accepts sayujya, maybe some other type of liberation. Devotee doesn't even desire anything, he just wants to serve Krishna, whether it be, like Lord Shiva said about Chitraketu, no? He said, whether one is in heaven or hell, devotee, wherever it is, he just wants to perform devotional service. Circumstances don't matter to him at all. As one wants to always be attached to the lotus feet of Krishna, wherever that might be, because he knows wherever there is Krishna, that's going to be, that's going to be just like that last verse of Bhagavad-gita, extraordinarily opulence, morality, and victory. No, I mean it's going to be Krishna. It's going to be transcendental. No? Everything's going to be the most auspicious. So, but where is Krishna? Again, that's the state of mind. Just like Srila Prabhupada. What was Vrindavan? Not that Prabhupada resided and stayed in Vrindavan, no. He went all over the world and wherever Srila Prabhupada was, just like he said in New York on the skyscraper building, he said, this is Vrindavan, because Vrindavan is a state of consciousness. But that state of consciousness will be, or can be manifested only, again, when one is peaceful, desireless. Desirelessness from what? From one's own personal sense gratification, personal selfish interest. One becomes absolutely selfless. but for sake of pleasing Krishna. That's what bhakti is. So then such a person is called muktikami because he desires to negate material illusion and merge into impersonal spiritual state free from anxiety. Okay, so much frustration, I want some relief. But that's not, of course, we know that's not good enough. It's not sufficient. Because then what after? Becomes boring, there's no activity, but soul by nature is active. It has to be engaged in something. So that's why so many philanthropists, they fall down. They fall down and become engaged again in what? Bodily activities. That's what Srila Prabhupada points out. What is the use of then such kind of transcendental so-called practice? Again, they come to the level of helping the body, relieving the body from troubles. But what's the use? That's not a realization. So muktikami is also motivated by personal desire, although the desire is somewhat more elevated. Similarly, the siddhikami or the mystic yogi who desires the spectacular powers of mystic yoga, such as reaching one's hand across the world and making oneself smaller than the smallest or lighter than the lightest, is also infected by material or selfish desire. Therefore it is said, Shakali Ashanta. As like Prabhupada also gave example, he talked about how there was that yogi who produced the branch of Kabuli Anar. He asked, what is it? I think his father tells the story, something like this or something. So he said that there was that yogi who asked someone, what is your desire? He said, I want some anar. So then he said, go into the next room, and there was a branch of fresh anar. He had that prapti, siddhi, interest. Yeah, Kabuli anar. So if one has any personal desire, whether it be material, philosophical or mystic, so any personal desire, that's pretty heavy because we are persons, at least that's what we think, but persons with false ego. Persons with false ego, so that means anything again based on false ego, personal desire, then what it said, you can't be peaceful, you'll be frustrated. Because he will see himself as the central object of satisfaction. But that's what we do. We always think we're mostly Anamaya. No, Anamaya. I'm the center of the universe. That kind of level of consciousness, the lowest, animalistic level practically almost. I exist because I experience everything through my senses, and everything has to be adjusted accordingly. Really lowest level of consciousness. So this egocentric concept is itself illusory and therefore ultimately frustrating. On the other hand, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataiva Shanta, a devotee of Lord Krishna is Nishkama, he has no personal desire, his only desire is to please Krishna. Lord Shiva himself has praised this outstanding quality of the pure devotees of the Lord by stating, well, that's what, Narayana Parasarve Nakutaschana Bhibhyati Svarga Pavarga Narakesh Apitulyartha Darshinaha. A person who is devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, is not afraid of anything. Well, that's what Srila Prabhupada said, the stage of sannyas or higher level of devotional service, not to have a fear, to be fearless, knowing that Krishna, just like Prahlad Maharaj, what did Prahlad Maharaj had to go through? But no fear, no anxiety. Whew, that's pretty high level. So elevation, it's not afraid of anything. So that quality also points out to higher level of higher state of devotional service, advanced state of devotional service, being fearless. Elevation to the heavenly kingdom, condemnation to hell, and liberation. Just like when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Mukunda Datta, no? He said, you will not see me for millions of lifetimes or something. It's like, so he, that sounded like condemnation. And then, but he was so happy. Why? Because, okay, after millions of lifetimes, fine, great. Even that will pass. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so pleased with such attitude, such consciousness. So one is not okay, condemnation, now what? Somebody Yeah? Happiness, distress, freedom from any duality. That's pretty high level of devotional service. Equanimity, and still remaining fixed and steady in one's devotional practice. Wow, that's amazing. So, condemnation to hell and liberation from material bondage all appear same to the devotee. So the devotee doesn't matter. He's always Krishna conscious. Although the impersonalist philosopher proposed that everything is one, the devotee of the Lord is actually Tulyarthadarshi, or empowered with the vision of oneness. The devotee sees everything as the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore desires to engage everything in the service of the Lord for the Lord's satisfaction. Since the devotee does not see anything as Dvitiya, or outside the scope of the Lord's potency, he is happy in any situation. That's like Gorkishore Das Babaji, or so many examples, so many devotees. No matter what the situation, circumstances are, always Krishna conscious. Yeah. So having no personal desire, the devotee of Krishna is actually Shanta, or peaceful, because he has achieved the perfection of life. Just like we heard that interesting example recently about when was Baladev Vidyabhushan, what was that? I think, yeah, his appearance there, this appearance there, that case in Jaipur, where Ramanandis removed Radharani from the altar, and all the devotees like really so I was looking, where was that stated? It's Vyasaki Prabhu in his Damodar Vilas. He says, he gives a little detailed description that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was happy. He was smiling, and he was like, and everybody was shocked. This is disaster. This is such a calamity. How could this happen? And he was happy, and said, they couldn't understand. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti explained, Radharani is in Man. She's upset with Krishna. That's why, it's like, well, completely different conception, completely different understanding. Yeah? So that's why he's actually situated in eternal constitutional position under the direct shelter and protection of the omnipotent Parameshwar Krishna. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, this verse ends the answer given by the first of the 9 Yogendras, Kavi to Maharaj Nimi's first question, what is the highest good? So that's the highest good, bhakti, devotional service, fully aligned with the desires of Krishna and pure devotional practice. Okay, it's 9 o'clock, we'll stop here. Any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna. So in Bhagavad-gita, Lord Shri Krishna gave many formulae for becoming peaceful, because he made it very clear that nasti buddhira yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavyata shantir asantasya kutasukam. Unless you have steady mind and intelligence, you cannot be peaceful. And then unless you are peaceful, how can you be happy? So that peace formula Krishna gave many times. And in the next 2 verses, he says, Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapaha pravishanti adbhut tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve shashanti mapnoti na kama kami. Just like the rivers flow into the ocean doesn't get disturbed. In the same way, even though the desires flow into the heart of a devotee, if he is not trying to fulfill those desires, he becomes peaceful.
Nice.
Not the one who tries to fulfill those desires. Then Vihaya Kaman, that was, it's already quoted. Then Yuktaha Karmafala Tyaktva Shanti Mapnoti Naistiki Ayuktaha Kamakarena Falasakta Nibadyate. This is from 5th chapter Bhagavad-gita, I think 11th or 12th verse. So Krishna says that being engaged in Krishna consciousness, one who gives the fruits of one's activities to me, Prabhupada writes, he attains unadulterated peace. Unadulterated peace. And the person who is not attached to me, who is not engaged, and then he performs activities for his own sense enjoyment, they become entangled.
Oh, thank you.
Like that, many verses. Then Shreyo hi dhyanam abhyasa dhyanat vishishyate dhyanat karmaphala tyaga tyaga chantir anantaram. There also in 12th chapter Bhagavad-gita he speaks about Shanti like that. Then Prabhupada writes in 3rd canto Bhagavatam, unless you are peaceful, you cannot be happy. And then unless you are fearless, you cannot become peaceful. Unless you become peaceful, you cannot be happy. Unless you are happy, you cannot perform devotional service.
Right.
Bhakti Yoga Bhayada. Like that. So, by reading 2nd chapter Bhagavad-gita especially, one Shiva Vaishnavacharya comments that one attains peace.
Okay.
Because just like water is oozing out from a floor, then what do? You keep some cap so that the water doesn't come. In the same way as the material desires, they ooze out from our heart. We should keep a cap in our heart. That cap is lotus feet of Krishna.
Okay, Jai, thank you. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.